Welcome to video number 8, Religious Principles. Let's talk about the religious beliefs and principles that underpin the founding of this nation. A lot has happened in the last 200 plus 40 years in science and technology. It is understandable that many people today have a hard time adhering literally to the fundamental tenets of the biblical accounts of creation. I'd like to point out that the founders were the product of the Age of Enlightenment, a historical period in Europe when intense questioning of traditional beliefs, religious and otherwise, were prevalent. It was also called the Age of Reason for a reason, no pun intended. If you find yourself in this category of people who cannot really buy into the whole quote-unquote church thing, you may find you have a lot more in common with some, not all, of the founders than you may think. Some of them were among the most prominent scientific minds of their time. Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson come to mind. Jefferson said, quote, "Question with boldness even the existence of God, because if there be one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear." And Franklin said this when he was asked about his religious beliefs. Quote, "Here is my creed. I believe in one God, creator of the universe, that he governs by his providence, that he ought to be worshipped, that the most acceptable service we render him is doing good to his other children, that the soul of man is immortal and will be treated with justice in another life, respecting his conduct in this one. These I take to be the fundamental principles of all sound religion, and regard them as you do in whatever sect I meet with them. As to Jesus of Nazareth, I think the system of morals and his religion, as he left them to us, the best the world ever saw or is likely to see. But I apprehend it has received various corrupting changes, and I have, with most of the dissenters in England, some doubts as to the divinity of Jesus. Though it is a question I do not dogmatize upon, having never studied it. And I think it needless to busy myself with it now, when I expect soon an opportunity of knowing the truth with less trouble. I see no harm, however, in its being believed, if that belief has the good consequence, as probably it has, of making his doctrine more respected and better observed. In another passage, quote, "I shall only add respecting myself that having experienced the goodness of that being in conducting me prosperously through a long life, I have no doubt of his continuance in the next, though without the smallest conceit of meriting such goodness." Signed, Benjamin Franklin. I do subscribe to the belief that there is more than meets the eye. The perceived world is just a part of a bigger reality which we cannot access from this side, if you will. Without getting into too deeply, let me say this: regardless of all the advances in science, we are no closer today than in any other time to being able to explain life and its purpose. I have a hard time accepting the absolute atheistic position. No one can say with absolute certainty that this is it, that there's nothing else beyond the physical world, and that everything happens by chance. To me, this position is as rigid and hard to accept as the fundamentalist view which interprets the Bible or any other religious text as literal truth, exclusive of any other. The most honest position is probably that of the agnostic, who accepts the humbling fact that we really do not know anything. Nevertheless, I accept and welcome the right we have clearly expressed in our Constitution to choose to embrace faith and live according to our beliefs. But, and this is a huge but, only when those beliefs help us become better human beings, preach love, promote understanding, tolerance, and inclusiveness. When religious dogma is misused and misinterpreted to justify and promote hatred, intolerance, bigotry, and or violence, I have a real problem with it. One more word about spiritual beliefs. At this very moment, by listening to me and hopefully understanding my words, you are engaging in a process which is totally separate from the concrete world of reality. You are understanding the abstract ideas and concepts I am trying to communicate. We don't think about it on a daily basis, but look at it from an objective viewpoint. It is amazing. The complexity of it is astonishing. And it's all happening in a non-physical realm, outside space and time, in the realm of the mind. Think of mathematics and the abstract plane in which it exists. What about the accomplishments of someone like Albert Einstein, who was able to figure out the workings of space and time? He developed this theory of relativity just by thinking about it. Yes, no experimental science there. Others confirm his theories through experimentation, but the fact remains he worked mostly in his other reality, on the plane of the pure abstract thought in the mind. Oddly enough, he came up with ideas that challenged the very concept of physical space and its relationship with time. Can you really buy into the quote-unquote scientific explanation that all of this is just a byproduct of a bunch of chemical reactions in the physical brain? Those are certainly happening, but I humbly accept the fact that we do not know. On the other hand, my power of reason finds the probability of the physical world being all there is highly unlikely. Even if you're an atheist, in the absolute sense, would you concede the following? That to accept, even for practical and utilitarian purposes, that there is a power above the human sphere of influence that is the source of the unalienable rights of the individual human being? Isn't this a sound, beneficial premise? Doesn't it provide, in a very pragmatic and practical way, a framework that protects and elevates the idea of the individual dignity and liberty to a much higher plane? That it makes for a better system than the opposite one, which is based on accepting that humans can rule other humans? I hope you can see the intrinsic wisdom and practical value of this fundamental idea. So to summarize, the founders were a product of the age of enlightenment, the age of reason. Reason and science were fundamental in shaping their worldview. Atheism is as extreme as fundamentalism. Agnosticism is the most honest and humble position. Reason supports the idea of a spiritual realm not accessible from the physical reality. Practical and pragmatic benefits derive from a God source for human rights. Thank you. I'll see you next time.